to Keen on Green with Evan Rigsby, the podcast that dives deep into the world of environmental consulting from a multitude of perspectives. Join your host, Evan Rigsby, as he explores the intricate challenges and innovative solutions within the environmental sector.
Hey everybody, welcome back to Keen on Green, and today we are having a very special back to school, back to fall episode. I have a special guest. Jennifer Aylor is coming to the show today. So a little bit about Jennifer is that she is an executive in the environmental consulting space, and she's helped grow billion-dollar companies. You know, one of the things I love about Jennifer is she loves working on complex issues, growing teams, mentoring some of the best in our industry. Now, the other thing I love about Jennifer is that she is an excellent relationship individual and really taking care of her clients, taking care of her team, and working with cultures all across the globe. I'm really happy to have her on the podcast with her background with different compliance and different regulations and just talking about the market and really some of her career experiences, you know, up until now and sharing her story. So, Jennifer, thank you for being on.
Thanks for having me, Evan. It's a privilege.
So, I guess to start out here, and I always like to start out the podcast, you've had a legendary career. And really from, you know, the leadership perspective, working with some great companies, and I know you're at NV5 right now. You know, can you talk a little bit about your career journey and, you know, some of the different areas that you've worked in?
Sure. I was 19 years old and sitting in one of those massive lecture halls at college. I hadn't quite decided what I want to do with my life. I was raised in a very small town, very conservative upbringing, and I could have sworn I heard the professor say the naughty F word. And I was sitting in my chair thinking, he didn't say that. And he said it again. It got my attention, and I have no clue what the lecture was about, but he brought a passion that drew me in immediately to the environmental science field. And that was that. He ended up, Dr. Lynn Robbins, he ended up being my advisor, was a wonderful man. But that's really what sparked my career, is having something that I cared passionately about. And if you can't care about cleaning up this earth and leaving it better for our children, that's an easy cause to get behind for me. So that was sort of what sparked it. I started off my career working for a consulting firm. And in consulting, you want to be well utilized, 70, 80, 90%. My utilization hung around 5%, and my mentors hung around 210%. So clearly we had a delegation problem. Not surprising, I lost my first job, worked for another consulting company. Again, bored out of my mind. I was young in my career, didn't know my value, didn't really know how to plug in. So I went to work for government. I was considering law school or going to work for the government. And I could either go $35,000 a year in debt, this was many years ago, or I could make $35,000 a year. And I decided to go to work for government, and I loved it. And I rose quickly. I came up right underneath a director level and decided to leave government and go to the private side. And it's just been a beautiful career of rolling through different environmental science fields, from stormwater management to regulatory to Clean Water Act, mitigation banking to the dirty side of environmental remediation and cleanup and Superfund work. It's really been a fun career that has touched on all kinds of environmental issues.
Well, I think off of that too, and you've worked at, some different firms and cultures like we talked about. What are you seeing with the current market right now? And I know you've kind of seen the private markets and the public markets and with all, the news and so forth. But, what are you seeing with some of these markets? And, what's your kind of take on the kind of wrapping up the year here and even for like 2026 for some of the stuff you get involved with?
Great question. The market has certainly been volatile. Last year, we were waiting for the election, and a lot of the private side were really waiting to kick off large projects to really see how the election shook out. Well, the election shook out. We have a change in administration, And that's impacted a lot of the federal clients now. So while it's settled down on the private side, a lot of our federal clients have pulled back. Funding has been slowed down. Not a political statement. I see both sides of the political, just it's the facts in the environmental industry. I don't see that letting up anytime soon. But I think with any position, it's good to be diversified. Years ago, I owned my own consulting firm for about 10 years. Excuse me. And I had it for planning, permits, and grants. I had the actual work we did was diversified. And by having 3 different areas of diversified expertise, it also brought in a diversified client base. And I think no matter in the consulting world, no matter which side you're on, public or private, to be diversified in your funding sources, it's critical. Now we've got a shortage or a holding rather on some of the federal funds. And I've watched some of my colleagues that are really heavily dependent on those federal funds. Their projects have just come to a grinding halt. If you're fully invested on the real estate side, last year when we were waiting for the election, a lot of the private side had just stopped investing in projects. So I just see it's always good to be diversified so you can help weather some of those storms. And I don't see that change ever really slowing down. I mean, it's the way of life is, what's to be counted on, death, taxes, and change, something like that.
Well, I've always wondered that for a while too, and I don't think taxes are going away.
Not so much.
Well, I think, too, and, we were kind of talking offline about this, where a lot of consulting, I feel like, is very team oriented. And, I think one of the wonderful things you've done is, as you mentioned to me a million times, you've mentored staff. You've worked with different teams. And, I think sometimes where our industry is marketed towards solely the technical and solely the projects, it's very much interpersonal skills too. And I think that's one of the things that's wonderful about your background is that, you have that emotional intelligence as well. Kind of going through your career, can you talk a little bit about that and just with some of the mentorship and, some of the team dynamic that you've gotten involved with, how critical do you think that is in our industry and what have been some experiences for you?
Oh, great question, Evan. The emotional side is second to none. You can have all the technical projects you want and all the technical skills, but if you alienate your team members, you're never going to get the performance that you need out of your staff. I've got a staff right now. We'll call her Susie. Susie came to me and quit, a year or so ago, handed me a resignation. I just said, no, thank you. We're going to figure out what the problem is, and really dug into it with Susie and was able to address all the issues she had, which were very reasonable issues. Despite having a great career, without a doubt, my most proud accomplishment are my 2 children. They are turning 24 and 20. One is in the U.S. Navy's nuclear engineering program on the officers track. The other one is studying civil engineering at a state college here in Washington. They're both incredible human beings, but first and foremost, I'm a mom to those kids. And in this world where women are oftentimes felt to be second class or that motherhood is less than, it's the strongest team building skill set I have is being a mom. And I'll share with my staff, I'm going to mom you right now, and they know that there's no higher praise than when I care for them the way I would care for my children. That is as good as it gets. There's a protection. There is a cheer you on to do the best. There is a try to figure out what your skill set is and where you're happy. It's being invested in their lives to care when the grandma/mom passes away. You know what an impact that is on your staff, to be sensitive to that. I had an older engineer in my office ask me, well, why do our staff come to you with these issues? I've been here a long time with them. Why don't they come to me? Because they trust me.
I wonder why.
And once somebody trusts you, make the birthday cakes, make the cupcakes, stop and get the tarts on the way for those little things that are creature comforts. Route the birthday card, go to the dollar store and get them. They don't have to be the $6 cards at Hallmark. do the little things that tell the staff you care, because when you care for your staff will turn around and care for you and your projects. It's not manipulative, and they can tell the difference. It's very genuine, and I have that heart because I care for people.
Well, I think one of the things you mentioned was one of the things I wanted to hit on. Our industry is very male dominated, and I think it's there are definitely some changes being made across the country, but there can still be a lot more. And like I was telling you offline, a lot of even the guests, viewers rather of this show are, young individuals in high school, in college, breaking into industry, and I can't tell you the amount of young women that look to your position and just absolute in awe. And, I love your take on that, and some of the kind of for the future of consulting too, because I think the career you've done and the tone you've set is phenomenal.
Thank you, Evan. I personally, I look at people as people. I don't care if you're pink, purple, polka dot, or what. I don't. I've never looked at color. Growing up, my very best friend was black. Her mom is very white. Her dad is very black. They got married in the '60s when interracial marriage was barely legal. I never knew it was an issue. My parents never. They never taught me differently. I mean, people are people. I don't see gender. I don't see color. It was just partly the way I was raised. And I was shocked when we got older to learn that there's this whole thing out there called prejudice. There is. And I've run smack into it myself as a woman.
Mm-hmm.
Early in my career, I was more reluctant to highlight those female traits. I'm a great baker. No, that's too feminine. Or, whatever sort of those more feminine qualities were. Through the years, I've learned to really capitalize on that. Those baking skills of mine, that negotiated 64 major levee repair projects, millions of dollars of repair projects that were stuck. I couldn't get past, and I swear it came down to a regulator and a Dyke District Commissioner. I found them common ground because they both like my frosted sugar cookies. I've learned to embrace those feminine traits and not see them as a disadvantage, but use them at times as a strength. There are still people that I run into, unfortunately, that gender matters to them, and you just find a way up, around, over. Just prove yourself to them in time. But just stand up and be who you are and be fabulous. It doesn't matter what gender you are.
And I think one of the things too, as you were kind of coming up through your career, for yourself, did you have, mentors that helped you along the way, or, I don't know, maybe any kind of story with a project or some milestone moments where it was like, wow, that was really a cornerstone moment for me?
That is a great question.
Or in general traits, where, kind of you look back at your career and some of the places you've been, and, folks who really helped you out too, to help where you are now.
There were regulators. I never had a female boss until the last couple of years. I haven't had a strong female boss, so that wasn't ever anything I had. I'm at NV5. I've had a great one of our COOs, Noreen Clendenning. She's been fabulous to work under, and she's been a great role model for me to look up to. But through most of my career, all my mentors were men. I mean, I literally had to sort of, carve out my space under great men. And again, not looking at gender, just looking at the great strengths. There were a couple of regulators that I really liked. One was from the Corps of Engineers. One was ecology. In fact, there's a thank you card behind me that was from the Corps of Engineers.
Really?
The regulator. Yeah. Gail Tersey. She was fantastic. She's long retired now.
Yeah.
There was a woman at ecology, Lauren Driscoll, that they were both strong women in the environmental field, and it was great to have that collaboration with them and to have some good regulatory wins through the years.
I love it. Not to pivot a little bit, but one of the areas I also wanted to get your thoughts on is, we've been talking a lot about like the present state of the market. What do you kind of see with the future of a lot of the consulting work? And, I would love your take with just some of the trends you're seeing. And I know, you've always kind of mentioned to me being innovative, being able to pivot, being adaptive, but, for some of your thoughts there on the market as a whole and kind of into the future there, what are some of the predictions you have? What are your thoughts on kind of the future of our industry?
I think green energy is just continuing to grow and grow and grow, where I think it's really going to dominate. We have all these green energy mandates coming. We don't have the infrastructure to support. So in order to deliver on the wind energy, on solar energy, we need so many more pieces of infrastructure in place to really develop. I think we're going to continue to see a tremendous growth on the environmental side just to support the green energy industry.
So when you say green industry, and for maybe we have a younger viewer here who doesn't really understand it, what do you mean by that?
So many systems are going to battery operated, being able to be, rechargeable vehicles. There's mandates on not only the vehicles, but on the heating, the air conditioning systems, that we're moving away from our traditional coal-fired, gas-based society into more green and renewable resources. But we don't have the infrastructure in place to support all that right now. So there's going to continue to be a significant amount of development for the grid systems, for the data centers, for being able to support all of these green energies. All the same technical studies are required. In development, it doesn't matter if you're building a wetland mitigation bank or a shopping mall. All the technical documents you develop, for the most part, are the same. It's just, what are you building in the end? And I still see a ton of consulting work going forward in order to support this shift in how we use energy as a planet.
Interesting. And, I think going back to some of those interpersonal skills like you talked about, a lot of that collaboration is leading with these projects. And, I have had a lot of requests from viewers where they're even folks of maybe even thinking of starting their own thing or their own practice. And, one of the things I absolutely love about your background is you did have that entrepreneurial backbone. You did start your own practice. Can you talk a little bit about that? I think that's fantastic.
Oh, yeah. Running your own business is not for the thinnest skin or faint of heart.
That's a lot.
I owned a small consulting firm for about 10 years. And up until the first time President Trump was elected, love him or hate him, it's not a political speech. I just know the day after, my cash flow radically changed. So not dissimilar to the year we've had this year, that with a major change in administration often comes major financial changes. I had a client at the time who was asking me to come run their organization for a long time. And so I opted to do that after just the organizational shift. But I started back, I needed a good job. I had 2 small children, and I was living about 60, 80 miles north of Seattle. And my partners at the time were all based in downtown Seattle. My kids were little, they were 2 and 6. And I didn't want to be on the road. I couldn't be on the road that far away. They can get sick. I needed to be close. I lived in a small town. I couldn't find a good job, so I decided to create one, because who do you trust more than yourself? So I did. I started with the people I knew and problems that I knew I could solve, and I went from there. And I started in January. December, I was still in business. I thought, well, I should send out Christmas cards and let people know I've survived my year. So I did. And it just grew from there. And we ended up with about 6 people. It was a nice, very boutique firm. Enjoyed it. I made a living on finding problems I could solve. I think my tagline was something like easily getting your permits, or something along those lines, seamlessly getting the yes. And I came up with a shorter line: if you can't get your permits, we can. And really built a business around that seamlessly getting the yes, making even complicated projects look easy. That was our tagline. And that still is where my heart is there's got to be an easier way to figure out when somebody says no, or there's a hiccup, or there's a problem. Figure out a solution to it. We're all pretty smart. And if we can address the problems, whatever it is, that to me is where my personal satisfaction lies.
I think that's phenomenal. And it seriously though, because I've had so many people that are maybe having a tougher year. And I know it's not necessarily been the easiest year for a lot of consultants. But I think where you've really had that Superwoman moment is that you were managing your family, you're running a business, you were taking care of your kids. I mean, I don't even know how you had an ounce of free time. And, and you were kind of like juggling everything there. And I've had so many disheartened people over there say it's impossible or you can't do it. And then I look to folks like you who have and are doing it. And, what would you say to someone like that, where you've you've done it all. You've been a mom, you've been a business owner, you're leading teams, For Jen, how do you kind of manage your time, be able to do all that? Because that's incredible.
Well, thank you, Evan. My college boyfriend named me Driven Fireball, and that was long before the whiskey came out. It has nothing to do with the cinnamon whiskey. So part of that is just your natural strength, right? I mean, I'm a busy mo. From the time I was a little girl, that's just part of it is your nature. Yeah. A huge part of it is your mentality. If you think you can, you can. If you think you cannot, you cannot. And right. So much of it is a mental part of it. Sure, there were lots of discouraging moments, but at those moments, you have to choose. You're either going to choose to believe in yourself or you're going to choose not to. And I was single for most of my business owning years. So single mom, fully responsible for 2 children and a business. I didn't have room to fail. So I'd come home to those 4 beautiful brown eyes looking at me, expecting to have food and skiing and trips and all the other things that we do as Americans. And you just make it happen. I mean, what's your motivating factor? I like listening to positive podcasts. Whatever you put in your mind, it's got to be can do it. Like the little train, I think I can. So what you put in your mind is pretty critical.
So, and I 100% agree with that. And I've always believed nothing's handed to you. You got to go hunt for it. And opportunities are there. You just got to chase it. And, I know you're a very big networker. And, you've been talking with thousands of folks. You've been to the conferences and so forth. For someone who's maybe starting out and really doesn't have a name to them, what was that journey like in your career? And like in your space, are there certain, trade groups or conferences you recommend that, you think pretty highly of where, someone maybe who doesn't have that footing and have that branding that you have and is looking to kind of get into the space, what would you recommend on that?
That's a beautiful question. Whatever the industry is, whether you're engineering or planning or geospatial, whatever the industry you're in, find a professional group to belong to. So for me, I'm a member of the American Institute of Certified Planners. That's the highest level of certification for a land use professional, which I have. And I've been a member of APA for years, American Planning Association. I found a way to serve. For 11 years, I was the Northwest Section president, and I was responsible for helping quarterly bring speakers in where other certified planners could maintain their certification. Again, the mom part of me, I watched attendance grow from that group to 10 to probably 50 people or so most quarters. By the time I stepped down after 11 years, what did I do? I fed them cookies. I would bring lunches in. I mean, I just treated them in children in the most respectful way, but meeting those basic human needs of food and snacks and making it a very comfortable environment. I'm currently a member of Construction Real Estate Women called CREW, fantastic group of just women that in the Seattle area, they're all over the US. That's a great organization. It doesn't matter what organization, as long as it's tied professionally and find a way to serve and give back. That is a great way to network. LinkedIn, build your LinkedIn profile. You mentioned branding. I'm working with another group right now that is helping polish me and is pivoting my own personal branding to reinvent yourself over time, to really stay polished, stay on top of your game, to continue investing in yourself. Those organizations don't come cheap, neither do conferences. And even if your organization can't pay the whole thing, maybe you pay half of it. But looking at it as an investment into your own personal career, you never know who in your network circles can introduce you to somebody else that might be where you need to pivot or go, or there's a resource for you. So I think those are all really important ways to continue networking.
No, and it pays dividends, and I
Mhm.
always tell people looking from a long-term view,
Yep.
and food always helps. And but even like if you're at a conference and you go with your team, I tell folks, when you go for lunch, don't sit with your team. That's the whole point. Talk with other people, have lunch with strangers,
Hmm.
but you shouldn't be with your team. You know,
Absolutely.
do that for the happy hour after,
Right.
and all that.
No, do that
Um,
next week when you're back in the office together. No, the conference, I'm not there with the people I know. I'm there. In fact, I'm staffing a conference next week. It's a bridge engineers conference. I'm neither an engineer nor am I a bridge engineer, but my office knows I'm personable. They're like, "Can you please go staff the booth and just go talk to people?" So I'm going to
yeah.
meet a ton of people that are not at all in my area of expertise, but I'm looking at myself as really a bridge maker between, pun intended, between those that I know and those that want to know somebody I know, and just being able to offer that and going in without an expectation of getting anything. I'm more looking at this as introductions to people who need to get to know each other, but not necessarily anything I'm wanting out of it. I'm looking for ways to be able to give and help people.
Well, I couldn't agree more, and I've always believed, you got to give to get, and it goes both ways. Um, Last question for you, and wild card question time. And I always like to kind of throw it out if there's any, book or resource or movie or everybody I talk with, it's interesting because there's a little tidbit, maybe it was a book or a quote that really stood out to them and really was a pinnacle for their development. And for you, what does that look like?
It's a continuum of constant learning. I can't say there was ever one book. It's it's a commitment to stay relative. I mean, I pulled some of off my bookshelf there. There's lots of them. Strength finders, figuring out what you're good at, what you love. There's creating a collaborative enterprise. Managing by the numbers is a really good one where we don't manage for our emotions. I mean, does it pencil and really do your homework?
Mm-hmm.
Leadership as an art, the art of when, perfecting timing, multipliers. This was a really good one about how to pull more people, more out of your employees by getting them to really want to do more. Be a multiplier, not a diminisher. And then Scrum. So there's so many good books out there. And I think as long as you're open, there's gems in all of them. And it's kind of like adding arrows to your quiver that they're tools you're going to be able to need in the future. You might not need them today, but I
Mm-hmm.
think I've always just had an aptitude to continue staying current and learning more what's out there.
Well, first of all, I'm going to be checking out the Multipliers book. I haven't read it yet.
That's a
And
good one.
you have a record for Keen on Green for the most books for the final question, so kudos.
I like reading. I'm a voracious reader.
um, but I fully agree because I think sometimes, and you've probably seen it too, even some of the more executives and higher ups, sometimes there's a sense of superiority of like, I know everything. And I think when you keep that openness and willingness to be taught new ideas, it's a lot easier said than done because not everyone's doing it,
Mm.
and and so forth. But this has been phenomenal, and for everyone watching, what I'm going to do is I'm going to put Jennifer's LinkedIn profile in the caption. If you want to message her or talk with her, don't be shy or reach out. And I really couldn't have asked for a better guest. So, Jennifer, seriously, thank you. This has been awesome.
Evan, I'm so touched. Thank you so much for inviting me and your generous time and having me here. It's always a delight to talk about the things you love.
And by the way, I'm filming from Connecticut. She's all the way on the other side of the country. So, this has been a cross country episode here.
It has. Greetings from Seattle.
Thanks, Jennifer.
Thanks, Evan. Until later. Bye.